Welcome everyone to another episode of Conversations with Diana. Today's guest is none other than Carleen Millwood. Carleen Millwood is a best-selling author, award-winning leadership strategist, international keynote speaker, screenwriter, and playwright who empowers others to soar to new dimensions of greatness. She has 3 published books, plus 1 collaboration, wrote, produced, and directed a play in 2014 titled Forgiven. She also produced 2 short films, one of which she wrote and directed and is presently filming her documentary. She's a well-rounded leader, having previously co-chaired the Women's International Support Network, WISN, at the Toronto Police Service for 2 years and led the women's ministry at her church for another year and a half. Carleen was featured on Power 106 FM radio in Jamaica and received an award of recognition in 2013 from the Kendal All Age School on that island. She was a 2014 nominee for the Ontario Women in Law Enforcement OWLE Community Service Award and the recipient of the IWB 2020 Leadership Award, and was recently nominated as a 2020 Woman of Inspiration by the Universal Women's Network. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Karlene Millwood. Welcome to Conversations with Diana. Carleen, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I've been looking forward to it. Being interviewed by another Jamaican is really an awesome privilege. So thanks for the invite.
Thank you so much for coming. Can you tell us a bit more about your journey as a Jamaican living in Canada and what that was like?
I came to Canada fresh out of high school over 30 years ago. So essentially I graduated in Jamaica on the Sunday, July 3rd. And by July 10th, I was in Montreal. So I had only 7 days of life in Jamaica after high school. The rest of my life since then has been in Canada up until now, right? Yes. And it was culture shock for me, honestly, when I just came here. I was excited to come to Canada, of course, because my mom was here, my favorite aunt was here, and I'm like, yes, I'm getting to see them. I'm actually going to live with them again. So all the excitement. And then I came and I loved Canada because I came in the summer, and Canada is beautiful in the summer, as we all know, right? And I loved it. What was missing for me, though, is that I had no friends, because I had left all of my friendships in Jamaica. And so I had to start out from scratch again, building new connections, building new friendships, and it felt really weird and out of place for me. I think I got a little bit depressed. I used to, go out in the balcony in the back of the house and just watch the airplanes go by and wishing I could be on one of them to go back home. Oh. But, it took about, I will tell you the truth, it took about 10 full years for me to really settle in and say, Canada is now home. It took 10 years for my mind to literally shift, because everything in me up until that 10 years is I'm going to just spend a few years here, finish school, and then go back straight home. That was in my mind, build my house. I even got, asked my grandmother for a piece of land to build a house on back there. It was in my mind.
But you had plans to go right back.
I had plans to go right back because it just wasn't feeling like home to me. But then college came. I went to college. I studied computer science in college. And while I was in college and church, there are a few young ladies at church. Even now, we're still friends from then. One of them is actually living here in Toronto as well. The other one stayed in Montreal, because I came to Montreal when I just came to Canada. And we still, maybe not as much, but if we, you know how it is, you have these kind of friends that if you don't see each other for 5 years and you see each other tomorrow, it's like nothing's missing in between.
Yes, definitely.
So that's the kind of friendship, those friendships are so solid. And so those started to help me to really settle into Canada. They both helped me with my college application. They themselves were going to college at the time, and so they knew the process and, all of that. So I went into college, and in college I started to make friends. Then I started to feel a little bit more normal, right? And it was fantastic for me in the sense that I grew up in Jamaica, where the majority of people there are Black. We do have people from many different nations living in
Yes,
Jamaica. So I want to make that clear to everyone, because I think Jamaica is more of a diverse society than Canada is sometimes.
yes.
Or maybe it's just because it's a little bit smaller, it just seems that way.
Mhm.
So, but the majority of the students I went to school with were Black. And then I came to Canada. And then the majority of people in computer science were non-Black. And so it's a matter of, okay, wait a minute. This is kind of strange to me too. How am I going to navigate this? But it was so easy. And honestly, it was so easy to build friendships in college. And in our program, computer science, there eventually over time, I think after the first year or so, because it was a 3-year program, there were 11 of us that gravitated toward each other and became a little posse, right? And every single one of us, Diana, was from a different country. Every
Imagine
one of us.
that.
Yes, there was me, the Jamaican, there was a Trinidadian, there was a Chinese, there was a Vietnamese, Cambodian, there was a Portuguese, there was a Russian, and everybody was, all of us. And we became this big talk on campus. Like, what is it with these people? They look at them, they're so much fun. We literally had to put 2 tables together in the cafeteria when we sat down to eat lunch. And what you found after a while is that other people wanted to come sit with us because they thought we were so cool.
Cool. I can imagine.
You know, and even the teachers were saying what a phenomenon, because they'd never seen anything like it. The way we just bonded together so well, and we stood up for each other. And, you know, it was just great friendships.
I think because you guys had a common bond, you know, you were all from somewhere else.
We were from so there was that bond of being, you know, the children of immigrants, and then also the bond of us studying in the same program. But I believe the bond went deeper than that. Mm-hmm. Our intrinsic values were closely aligned, and so we found it easy to be in each other's presence. And I'll tell you something funny. One of the girls that I felt closest to is an Italian girl, Lorena. And so I would go by her house all the time. And her father one day saw us studying together at the dining table. And so he came. She says he used to do this all the time and freak her friends out. So he takes some bottles down off the shelves in the kitchen, and he came and he places them in front of me. And I picked up one of the bottles and I go, wow, you guys eat cow tongue too? Because it was like cow tongues pickled in the bottle, and there were different things pickled. And so when I did that, he sat back and he looked at me, he goes, this doesn't frighten you? I said, no. He goes, oh my God, oh my darn. You know, I said, no, it doesn't. We eat cow tongues in Jamaica too. And, you know, we started to, exchange what we eat in our different countries. And so I said to him, I have one up on you though. Have you ever eaten pig balls? And he looked at me really strange. He goes, no,
You're going to have to tell me about that one, Carleen. Pig balls.
I don't, but I have seen people actually roast them. They roast them and they eat them. So I'm just like, okay, good. I'm not touching that one. So it was hilarious that day when he couldn't freak me out. So I became his next daughter. And so, because we didn't even realize that our cultures were so aligned in those ways. They say just as we have chickens running around the yard and goats and stuff, they have the same thing in Italy. So, you know, it was, we have so much more in common than we do differences. And, you know, it's just a matter of sitting down and getting to know each other. So those things for me, my first 10 years in Canada were very significant. And then I came to Toronto, and I would say in the 30 plus years that I've lived here, it's been terrific, honestly. Not that it hasn't had its challenges. I honestly believe that Canada is a really beautiful country. The opportunities that I've had here are fantastic, right? I've been able to live parts of my dream already up until now, and I'm working out the rest of it. I spent a lucrative 20-year career in information technology, and that's from the computer science that I studied in college. So I'm one of probably a few people who actually worked in the discipline they studied, right? So that people do study things and then they branch off to
something else.
And you know, I've made some fantastic friendships. I've experienced racism out in the society. I've experienced inequities on the job. I've experienced, you know, different kind of difficulties. I in all of those, though, as difficult as they were, and it's never easy when you're going through those things and you know that these things are being done for no other reason than the color of your skin.
Yeah.
And but the one thing I know is that Jamaicans have such a determination. We're such strong-willed people that it's very difficult for anyone to hold us back if we don't allow them to.
That's true.
And so I didn't allow any of those things to hold me back. In whatever way I could, I took charge. I remember in one organization, I began to tackle the subject of gender inequity because I was doing the same job as my male counterparts and they were making 20% more in pay than I was. Yes, I understand that there were some of them who had a little bit more experience than I, but what about the ones that I trained, right?
They were making more than you.
They were still making more than me, but they came into the job after me and I had to train them. And then they were still making more money than I was. And so we're doing the same exact position,
yes.
right? And they were making more money than I was. So there was that. And I tried to address that. I was only 27 years old. I don't think I was sophisticated enough, but I took a first step, and it caused a big, what was it? What do I want to say? It put a process, put a stop to the process, or a pause to the process of my performance appraisal that year, because I've learned that some things you don't address face to face. If you want to address it, you have to address it in a process like your performance appraisal. You're appraising me. Here is where I'm thinking that these inequities occur, and based on my work, this is what I think and so on. So my performance appraisal process took longer than the rest of my team that year, because they were trying to, I don't want to use the word bully because it may be too strong, but they were strongly suggesting that I change my narrative. And I was holding out and said, no, I'm not, because I believe in what I was saying.
Good for you.
And the way things actually moved forward is that the managing director at the time, he was a gentleman from Africa. He called me into his office one day and he said, can we talk? And I said, sure. And first of all, as I entered into his office, he says, may I give you a hug? I need your permission. And I said, yes. Give me a hug? That's really strange.
Yes.
May I have your permission and I'll tell you why. And so I said, okay. I trusted him because I know he was a Christian man too. And so he hugged me and he said, I'm proud of you. And I said, for what? And he says, have a seat. And so we started talking and he said, I am proud of you. How old are you? I said, I'm 27. He says, I am so proud of you because there are people in this organization who's older than you going through what you're going through and they're afraid to speak up. He said, you're the first to ever do it. And I'm so proud of you.
You paved the way.
I did. And so, that gave me such a boost of confidence to say, even though I felt alone in the process at that time, that someone actually saw what I was doing, recognized it, and felt that it was a good thing. And so what he said to me, he says, I'm going to ask you to do something for me. He says, I'm going to ask you to just, he asked me to make some changes to my comments. And he says, I'm not telling you to do that because I don't believe in what you write or what you're doing. I'm asking you to change it just to finish the process. And number two, they're just not ready for what you're presenting to them. They don't know how to handle it. And he says, let's just finish the process. You and I know that what you're saying is true. And so, that gave me some affirmation and some validation that the steps that I was taking were valid. So I listened to his advice and we got over that process. And then,
did things change?
Not for the tenure that I was there. It wasn't horrible. However, it didn't change. It didn't change. And so I moved on to a different organization. And ironically, in that organization, it was one of the fellows that I used to work with, because he had moved on to a new company, recommended me to one of the managers at the new company he was working at, and I got that job over there after interviewing. So this was not affirmative action. After interviewing for the job, I got my job. And then ironically, I also brought over one of the other men that I was working with to come and work with me over there as well. And the field was a little bit more level on that team. You understand? It was a little bit more level. I felt like we were working in a very forward-thinking company when it comes to employee engagement, employee empowerment, some of the things that are being taught now, that company was doing it in the mid to late 90s already. They were already dealing with work-life balance, and I could work from home one
They
day a
were
week.
progressive.
I usually do. Yeah, they were very
Yes.
progressive. I didn't have to be in the office at exactly 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock every morning. I could go in at 11 o'clock, do my 7.5 hours, and finish whatever time I chose, whatever was comfortable for me,
Right.
And so I found that environment was just, it was so suitable to my personality, and I thrived in that environment.
Imagine
And
that.
so, and then, but things change, and I find that when you have a great leader, and from someone who's a leadership strategist, I look at leadership through different eyes. And when you have a great leader in an organization, and for whatever reason that leader leaves, then it shifts the balance of everything else within that organization. If you don't have someone with the same kind of leadership spirit entering that space, then everything shifts. And so you found that after that leader left that organization, then the majority of us who were on that team started trickling away as well.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's
Because
been
people tend to go where the good people go. So if
yeah,
you had a good leader and he left, then yeah.
he's still a mentor to me in some senses now. We used to have lunch all the time, but I think he's retired now, so he's taking it a little bit easy. But we still keep in touch on social media and all of that. So he was really a mentor to me even after he left the company and I moved on to a different company. We would connect all the time, and either by telephone, emails, whatever. He just always wanted to know how I was doing, and I suspect that I wasn't the only one, because he was just that kind of a leader. He really believed in mentorship and passing down what he knew to you. And I really, really appreciated that. And then you go to another organization where it was like the organization was back in the 70s still. The mentality, the mindset, the whole of that. And they were just not ready to come forward to the 21st century. There was this tug of war. They wanted what they didn't want it. And so, that's where I experienced most of the inequities that I talk about experiencing on the job. So to the point where at one point I had to get the diversity management department involved, and they had to do an investigation into the matter and all of that, so in the end, what happened with my case was that the individual that was being investigated had to apologize to me in front of their boss. And I believe they got some reprimand that was, ended up on the HR file and stuff like that. So this is not something that I'm just pulling out of my head. It was investigated, and this was the end result of it.
Yes.
So, I will say that I have experienced quite a bit in Canada. I've experienced the good, I've experienced the bad. I will say the good, though, far outweighs the bad for me. And so I choose to focus on that a lot more, not to put aside what I've experienced, because I believe those are an integral part in the fabric of my story. All right. To say that it is anything less than it is would be a disservice to the country and to the people, because if you're not addressing the issues, then they're going to remain and nothing is going to change. It's going to continue to be a systemic problem. So, things have to be looked at, things have to be talked about, even if it is uncomfortable. And this is what we need to do right now. So yeah, I've had a great time in Canada, great career up until now. I've become an entrepreneur, building my own business, Carleen Millwood International, and my production company, which is Jazz Divine Entertainment. And how did I get into arts and entertainment?
Yes, that was going to be my next question. How did you get into that and writing? I know you've written a few books.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about that and how you transitioned into filmmaking.
Okay, so me and the writing situation, it began in third form in high school in Jamaica. I went to Manchester High School in Jamaica, and I remember in our literature class, we always read these stories, and it was about Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn and different people. I remember reading a couple books. A House for Mr. Bizwas by Chinua Achebe, a Nigerian writer. And I enjoyed that book so much because what, Diana? I could relate to the kids. Yes. I could relate to the children. I've never been to Nigeria, but the experiences that he wrote about with the kids in the book is like, wait a minute, we do that in Jamaica too.
Exactly.
I could relate. And so, but for the rest of them, I couldn't relate to the children at all. The stories were good. They were funny. They were all of that. But I couldn't relate. And so I thought at that time, I'm sitting at my desk was right by the window, so I'm looking across into Mandeville Square at the parish church, and my thoughts just went to, when I grow up, I am going to write a book that talks about children in Jamaica. And so it was birthed in me at that time. 25 years later, yes, 25 years later, I wrote my first book, A Bucket Full of Mangoes. I didn't even know that I liked writing because I was terrible at compositions. Once in a while I would get it right. I was terrible at compositions in school. So, but I was going through a tough time around then. And I came to the place where the only way, or one of the best ways for me to maintain peace and a clear mind, was just to write my thoughts down. And so I started journaling every day. And in the process of journaling, I realized that I was writing out some things in my story from childhood, things that used to make me laugh and things that used to anger me. And I go, wait a minute, I see something here. And so I started to think of all the stories of my life growing up that I liked. And I made notes about them. And so my first book, A Bucket Full of Mangoes, is a collection of short stories about a little girl named Karlene. And what I did was to take nuggets from the parts of my life story that I liked and just build other stories around.
Yes.
And so, it has gotten such fantastic reviews, especially from Jamaicans.
Yes.
And I brought some of them down to Jamaica and they sold out in no time.
I remember you told me.
I need to get some more in Sangster's bookstore down there shortly. Yeah, but and the title of the book is actually one of the titles of one of the stories in the book. And that one was one of my favorite ones because it talks about a day when my grandfather and I literally sat out in the yard underneath a mango tree and had a mango eating contest. And I was so sick.
Don't you, because one of my favorite fruits is mango.
Yeah, one of my favorite fruits is mango. I was so sick the next day though, and the joke in the family is that I have mango fever because I had so much mango the next day. So there was no way I could write a book about that and not put that story in it.
Exactly.
It was one of my favorite moments, and I still chuckle about it sometimes. So that was my foray into writing, and after that, I wrote. What did I write after that? Was when I wrote my first play, Forgiven. And that again is one of those moments when I was experiencing some political situations in the office, and there were some situations designed to frustrate me and to try to get me to leave and all that kind of foolishness. Yeah. And I sat there and I said, okay, fine, if you guys don't want to give me work to do, I'm going to use my time. You're going to pay me to do something of my own. Right. And I sat there and I created the first draft of the play, then I edited the play, and then I said, wait a minute, I'm really going to take a chance here and see if some people would be interested in it. And a friend of mine had a cafe at the time, and I showed it to him and he goes, hey, this could be done right here. And so I asked the staff at the cafe, because we were very close, I asked the staff at the cafe if they would be willing to be the actors, and everybody was so excited. Yes, we want to be a part of it. Some of them had never even acted before, right? And so we started rehearsals at the cafe, and we rehearsed for months. And then in the summer of that year, we put it on stage. Everybody was turned, me as a first-time writer, theatrical writer and director and producer, and most of them as first-time actors and actresses. And Diana, that night, there were roughly 300 people.
What?
On opening night. We were shocked beyond our wits.
Was it a free event or?
No. It was a goodness. It was a paid event. So what used to happen? What happened is that every year I used to do these jazz showcases where I invited jazz artists from the States or even locally here in Canada. And I put on this jazz showcase right at the same cafe. And the proceeds from that showcase would go to students in Jamaica at the primary school that I used to go to as a scholarship from me. So that year, instead of doing that showcase, I decided the play was going to be it. So the way I wrote the play was that within the play, there was a jazz concert within the play, right? So people still got what they knew me for, but they got it on a different level. Yeah, and so they were so pleasantly surprised at that part of it because no one really knew what to expect. And so, but yeah, it was a full house and people enjoyed it so much.
That's amazing.
even now people are still asking me when I'm doing a part 2 to it, you know. So
You should.
so that's that's my foray into theatrical writing, producing, and directing as well.
Oh.
There was a guy there, the guy who did the videography for me that night. He works in the film industry, and he pulled me aside after the event was over, and he says, "Can I ask you a question honestly?" And I said, "Sure." He says, "Did you say, I thought you said that your actors were first-time actors?" And I said, "Yeah, they are." And he says, "I don't believe you." I said, "With the exception of maybe 2 of them, every single other one were first-time actors." And he goes, "What I saw on stage tonight is better than some of the things I see on set. And I work in the film industry every day."
Amazing.
He says, "You have something here." He says, "Either they are great actors or you are a darn good director. I'm not sure which one it is." He says, "Have you directed anything before?" And I said, "No." He goes, "Okay, you're blowing my mind right now." So,
Oh my goodness.
he says, "You should seriously think, though, of turning this play into a movie, because I could see it on screen." And then I said to him, it's funny that you should say that, because while I was writing it, in my mind, I was seeing screen as opposed to stage. But it ended up on stage because I grew up with going to a lot of plays in Jamaica. I went to movies too, but there were so many plays, and I was always going to the theater and the pantomimes and I love the theater. So even though I was seeing that in my mind, I put it on stage, and I mean, that's okay. It's a good way to test if it will work. You know what I mean? If people would be interested in the subject. And so he encouraged me, and I said, "Steve, I have no idea how to do film, or how to write for film." And he goes, "Don't worry about it. I'll help you." And so he started to help me, and in the process of that, so many different things happened, and I felt the tug, and I went away to Vancouver to study at the Vancouver Film School, because I really wanted to understand the discipline of filmmaking. There in Vancouver, I spent a year in an intensive 1-year program. I studied writing for film and television. There was producing for writers as well. There is a separate production program completely, but even in the writing program, they teach you how to produce. In that program, a bunch of us in our class, we got together and we did our first short film called Princess Lamb. It was such a fun project. She wrote it. It was written by Christina, who's a Russian girl, Christina Shamsina, and she has children, so she writes fairy tales, and she loves to write these kind of stories. And it was about a lamp at an acting school. No one knew that the lamp was sentient, so the acting students would go in and they would pour their hearts out to this poor lamp because they thought they were alone and they would feel safe, and the lamp is listening to everything that they're saying, but it can't respond.
Into all the secrets.
I know. And then there were deeper after during filming it or afterwards, we're realizing, wait a minute, there are some deeper themes to this story that we didn't even realize, because we're looking at this lamp as just a lamp, but it's so much more than that. And isn't that the way we treat people in society all the time? Just, judging them by the way they look, and you have no idea of what else is inside of them. And so, there was the one guy that went in and could communicate with the lamp. She had met her match. In that moment of meeting, she transformed from a lamp into a beautiful princess. Right? And so you know what, I can actually send you the link to that later. And I will actually send you the link to both my short films. The second one, which I wrote, produced, and directed myself, obviously with other people. Would
you be willing to also share, I could put the link in the description of the video as well for anyone who would like to
watch it, for sure.
Great.
For sure. So the second one was When Destiny Calls, and it is about star-crossed lovers who lived somewhere in the Caribbean, and there was a natural disaster that devastated their home, and they had to be moved to different places, and they hadn't seen each other in over 20 years, but there was this still longing for each other. They were still, in love with each other, and they actually met and didn't recognize it. There was something familiar about the other one,
yes,
but they just couldn't put their finger on it until afterwards. They got a little bit of help, and then she was heading off to another country to work, and then by the time he realized who she was and ran outside, because they met in passing at a cafe, she was leaving, he was coming in for lunch, And by the time he realized who she was and ran back outside, the car had already gone. So it was just like, darn. And so people watch it all the time and they're like, please tell me you're going to do a part 2 to this where they get together. And I'm like, no, I'm not, because you have to understand filmmaking. Filmmaking is supposed to leave you feeling something. And that longing that you're feeling to see the end of this is like the longing that these two people have been feeling for the past 20 years. So I, as a writer, have accomplished my work in allowing you to feel what the two people in the film are feeling. And so people are saying, no, you have to make it into a bigger movie. And so I keep getting that as well for this one. Right?
Yes, so, a part 2, and that's how sequels are born too.
And that's how sequels are born. And so the
maybe there's something else to explore there. Maybe people feel that they've been cheated. You never know. Meaning that they want to see the story develop, maybe get some more juicy.
But
I get what you mean. Sometimes you don't want to spoil it. You prefer
I know. Well, you know what? I've actually toyed with the idea that maybe at some later date I will revisit it, make it into a feature film. So it's a thought right now. We'll see how it works. But the funny thing about it is that 3 years ago, I saw a film at TIFF from it's an independent filmmaker. He's African. I think he's Somalian by birth, but he lives in LA. And the story was talking about the same thing. And I thought to myself, what are you saying to me? and that was one of my favorite films that I saw, just because it so closely resembled my short film in the theme. One of the things about writing that I would like to say to anyone who wants to become a writer of any sort, whether it's books, novels, plays, movies, there are some people who will like your work and some people who won't. Don't be discouraged if someone doesn't like what you do. It doesn't mean that anything is wrong with it. It's just not their taste. Another thing about it is that it will be critiqued. They will tell you certain parts of it that they think you could do differently. And, you take it all with grace. Remember that you yourself are a unique individual, and the way that things manifest through you is not the way they would manifest through someone else, even giving the same topic to write, right? So be content with that. What you are putting out, that's what you were designed to put out. Also, don't be afraid to ask for feedback on your work. Don't be afraid to take the feedback and apply it in the best way possible. You don't have to accept all of the corrections. Right. It's up to you, right? It's you accept what works and keeps the theme of your story, and the rest you can put aside. Nothing wrong with that at all. It was one of the hardest things for me, and I believe I've heard many different writers say the same thing, to accept critique on their writing, because it's almost like it's your child. This is your child that you're doing, and some other adult is mom shaming you for not taking care of your child properly, right? So learn to accept the critique, because it has helped me to develop more as a writer. And especially when you're putting things on screen and on stage, I would say that make sure that you get someone else to vet the story for you. Don't be afraid to listen to people, because they're looking at it. Remember, you're the writer and they're looking at it now. They're the audience. Does this make sense to the audience, right? You're writing for the audience, not for yourself. So don't be afraid to take that feedback, because that could really help you to make a masterpiece as opposed to a dud, right? So that's one of the pieces of advice that I can give to anyone who's a writer. Don't be afraid of feedback, negative or positive. Take it with a grain of salt and see what best fits your storyline, and whether or not some of those criticisms or feedback would really fit and add depth and richness to the story. If they do, incorporate them. If they don't, put them aside.
Thanks for that wisdom and knowledge that you just imparted, because someone who is aspiring to do more plays and more books, it makes sense that you mentioned to always get some feedback.
Yeah.
How else can you improve? How else can you grow?
Yeah.
So really appreciate that. Carleen, we're almost at the end. I can't believe it. I could sit here for hours talking to you. Can you tell us how you unwind? Because obviously now is a stressful time for everyone because of all the things going on in the world today. Yeah. What are some of the things you do to just get back centered and to feel more relaxed and at peace?
I do two things. If I disappear and you can't find me, scour the waterfront. you'll find me anywhere water is. Yes. Yes. I am always down by the waterfront, whether it's going all the way downtown, whether it's on Port Credit south of me, whether it's out in Burlington. I like Bronte Harbor in Oakville. I mean, anywhere along the lake shore. Just look for me anywhere there is water. I also love trees, big, massive, tall trees. So go look for me in the Rouge River somewhere sometimes. But I love nature.
You love nature.
And so when I was in Vancouver, it was the perfect place for me from my unwinding. And I would literally take my laptop into the forest with me. There's a little lake that I know, a quiet place. Tourists are always going by, but they trickle by. It's not like a big, massive crowds. And I can deal with that. And there's a bench right in front of that little river there. And I'm surrounded by these massive, gigantic trees that are like 200 and 300 years old. It was serenity. And so I would literally take my laptop in there and just put my foot up on the rock and sat there and write my scripts for how many hours. And so, you know, I came back to Toronto. Unfortunately, I don't have those massive trees in Mississauga, but I do have the lake. And so I make use of the lake a lot. I do take my laptop down to the lake with my, you know, my chair that I bought at Walmart. And I sit out there and I write.
Shameless plug for Walmart. But in the winter, how do you
outside of that
survive?
Obviously, I'm a movie buff. So before or pre-COVID, if I'm not at the lake, I'm in the cinema for unwinding, right? Sometimes I would leave the lake and head straight to the cinema. And so right now, because I'm not going into the cinema right now, Netflix has become my best friend.
Yeah.
My second best. My second best friend outside of the lake.
There,
yeah, so that's what I love to do to unwind. It's either watching a great movie or sitting out in nature somewhere, you know. So that's me. That's how I unwind. Very laid back, and you know, if you throw some jazz music in the back of that, then I'm literally in heaven. So
it sounds like heaven. It sounds like heaven. What are you working on right now that you want to tell us about, and then how we can connect with you?
Diana, I have 3 book projects in the works. One of them, hopefully, I'm trying to get that one out within the week. It's complete. I'm just waiting for my ISBN number, and then it will be ready to go. I'm publishing it first on the Kindle version on Amazon, while we continue working and laying out the paperback version of it and so on. But at least I'm making it available that way. So there are people like me who like to read everything on their phone or on their, you know, their tablet nowadays. So you'll have it that way. It's a leadership book. As you know, my business is a leadership consulting business.
Yeah.
And so it's a leadership book this time. I haven't posted anything about it on Facebook yet because I wanted it to be ready and available so that if someone wants to go get it right away as soon as they see it, then they'll be.
You heard it here first, guys.
So that's coming out.
Do you have a title, or you don't want to spill the beans on that yet?
I don't want to spill the beans on that just yet, but hopefully, I'm hoping that I'll have my ISBN number and everything will be ready to go within a week or so. And then I'll post it. So people can get in touch with me. Number one, they can visit my website, www.karlenemillwood.com. I'm also on Facebook as Carleen Millwood, and my business page is Carleen Millwood International. I am on Twitter at Sweetly Divine, and Divine is D-V-I-N-E. So there is no I between the D and the V. So it's Sweetly, just as it sounds, Sweetly, D-V-I-N-E, one word. And where am I? On LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn as well as Carleen Millwood. So search for me there. I'm also on Instagram as Carleen Millwood. So everywhere else, I'm Carleen Millwood, except on Twitter, where I am Sweetly Divine. But if you search for my name, I'm sure you'll find it just the same. So those are how people can connect with me.
Okay. I will drop the links in the description as well for those of you who missed that and wanted to check it out. Thank you so much again, Carleen, for joining us. And again, we wish you every success with your upcoming projects, and know they will be really good.
Thanks, Diana.
Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of Conversations with Diana.
Help me to continue to do this by making the choice to subscribe, like, share, and follow.